Good morning, everyone. We are now in Perek Gimel Mishna Beis. Mishna Beis is a continuation of Mishna Aleph, where we had a case of a person who separated a barrel of wine for other barrels of wine, separated one barrel of wine as truma for the other barrels of wine, and it came out that the barrel that you separated as truma went sour and turned into vinegar. The previous Mishnah stated that if the case was a case where we don't know at what point the barrel soured, because if we could figure out that it was sour when you actually separated the truma, wouldn't it be a good truma? If we can figure out that it soured after you separated the truma, then it's a good truma. The question, but let's say you don't know, you can't figure it out. It's a suffix, it's a doubt. Did it become sour when you separated it as truma, or did it happen after? So then the Mishnah said, we're left with a suffix, we're left with a doubt. Each one, you have to now the first truma you separated is a doubtful truma. You got to separate another truma because since the first truma may not have worked, the rest of these barrels are table. They need truma to be separated from it. So you got to separate a separate. You have to now separate again truma for those barrels. So you're left with two trumas. One is and both are a question. Which one is the real truma? One of them is real. One of them did work, but we don't know which one it is. So the Mishnah said that in a case where one of these doubtful trumas falls into a mixture of other grain, we don't say the regular rule of you need 100 times more to nullify the truma, as in the case of known truma that gets mixed up with chulin with non-truma produce. We don't say that you need 100 times more. And we also say that if a non-Kohen were to eat it unintentionally, or if you do so by regular truma, you have to pay the principal and add a fifth. When it comes to suffix, when it comes to the case where the truma is a suffix, it's a doubt, you don't have to pay that amount. So now the Mishnah continues to explain that case more. And the first line of the Mishnah is a repeat from before. Mishnah Beis begins, Nafla akas behen l'sei chachulin. If one of them falls into chulin, into produce that all the trumas and maasros have been separated from, einam b'damasan, it doesn't create the doubtful mixture, doesn't create a forbidden mixture. Typically, as I say before, truma falls into a mixture of non-truma produce. The Rabban and Chacham and sages instituted, they need 100 times to nullify it. And even if it does nullify it, the Kohen still, so there's no forbidden truma here, but the Kohen's monetary rights here still have to be respected, and you have to give him an amount of grain that would have equaled the truma that was his. But the mixture itself, if there's 100 times more, becomes permissible. If there's not 100 times more, you're going to have to give the whole pile, the whole grain, the whole mixture is forbidden because you don't know where the truma is. You give the whole mixture to the Kohen. The Kohen will pay you the amount of chulin that was in the mixture, but the truma amount he keeps for free because that's what he deserves. So the Mishnah again repeats the first part. Now again, we're going back to the case before. You've got two suffix trumas. Nafla achas me'lasei chachulin. If one of them falls into chulin, einam b'damasan, it does not create a forbidden mixture. Nafla shni l'makom acher. Now, after the first one fell into one pile of chulin, the other one fell into another pile of chulin. Okay, so each one fell into its own pile of chulin. Einam b'damasan. The halacha is, again, neither one will create the forbidden mixture. The point of the Mishnah here is that although it comes out that we know one of them is truma, so one of them did, one of these things that fell into either pile, one of them has to be truma. Nonetheless, being that we don't know which one it is, we still apply the leniency of dealing with a rabbinic law. The whole idea of needing 100 times more is a rabbinic law, and therefore, again, being that we're talking about two separate piles, we judge each one separately, and we are lenient. Now, what if both of them fell into the same place? Okay, so now we have both these questionable trumas falling into the same chulin, into a pile of chulin. Okay, so now for sure we know there's truma in there. Either what has been referred to as the larger truma, the first, let's say the case of the barrels, right? Well, that's what we're dealing with. The first barrel was 1/50th. We say the second barrel, according to Bar Tanura, that you have to separate is for the other 49. So it's going to be a 50th of that. Theoretically, it's a smaller truma. So we have the larger truma, suffix truma, we have the smaller suffix truma. They both fell in, so we know that right here in this same pile, we for sure have truma. So the demu is there, the mixture is there. Now we have to figure out how much of the chulin we need to have in order to nullify it. Says the Mishnah, metames kektana shebishnein. The halacha is, now that they both fell in together, the mixture will only create a forbidden mixture according to the amount of the smaller one. That means that when it comes to the question of how much do I need, if I need 100 times more of chulin to nullify, I need 100 times more of which one, of the larger one or the smaller one? The answer is, I only need for the smaller one. That's how much. If I want to be able to nullify, the fact that if I want to be able to nullify, but if I need 100 to nullify, I need 100 times the smaller one. The bigger one, in case it's the real truma, we would say can become nullified in the majority of chulin. It doesn't need 100 times. That can fall back on the Torah law that if I have the majority, it's two of the same type. I have the majority. That's going to nullify it. But although that was a suffix truma, nonetheless, being that in this case of the demua, I have both trumas mixed together. I have the small one, I have the bigger one. The Chachamim said I only have to be stringent with the smaller one because again, it's a rabbinic law. So dealing with rabbinic law, we're more lenient. I only have to deal with the rabbinic law for the smaller truma, which means 800 times the smaller truma, and the larger truma will become nullified by the majority. Now, okay, so that's the point of the demua. What's interesting is that what about the other halacha that we had, which is the chomesh, the surcharge? Okay, let's say the same thing applies. If I eat one of the suffix trumas, I don't have to go ahead and pay the surcharge. But if I eat both of them, so now we know that for sure one of these trumas one of them was the real truma. One of them has the surge. It comes out now. I for sure ate what was a Torah truma, and if I sure ate what was a Torah truma, I got to pay a chaimish. I can't get around and saying, "Well, I'm left with a doubt." I'm not left with a doubt. I know I ate both of them. If I ate both of them, then I know that I ate a truma, a Torah truma. So I have to now pay a chaimish. I have to pay a fifth. Okay. Now, when it comes to paying the fifth, we're going to say, all right, the fifth is based on which one, the smaller one or the bigger one. The answer is that since the added fifth, the surcharge of a fifth, is a monetary right of the Kohen, well, the only monetary right that he for sure has is a smaller one, because we don't know, is it the smaller one that's a truma, the bigger one that's truma? For him to be able to demand the larger one, he's got to prove it. So it comes in at the end that his rights, that his definite rights are only to the smaller one, and therefore, when it comes to paying the surcharge, paying the chomesh, I'm going to pay according to the smaller one. I have to pay according to the bigger one. It's a monetary question. To have to do more than what's obvious is the burden is upon him, and therefore the surcharge that I pay can be enough to be the smaller one. What's interesting is to deal with the principle, because don't forget, you have to replace the keren and replace the chomesh. Okay, so now, which one is he going to have to take care of? Which principle does he have to pay? Well, as we said, as we learned previously, when it comes to paying the principle is not a monetary payment. The principle is your kapara, it's your atonement. Since your atonement, you got to be more stringent, and therefore, I have to pay the principle based on the larger amount to make sure that I have my atonement. But again, what about the Kohen? Now, this principle goes to the Kohen, right? So can the Kohen demand this whole larger principle? He can't. He doesn't even know. Nobody knows if he has really the rights to this bigger one, to the larger one. It's all a suffix. It's all a doubt. So if it's dealing with my atonement, I have to be stringent. That's not a monetary issue. That's called Isser. That's a question of fulfilling what the Torah wants from me. Well, that already is something that we have to be stringent on. The principle has to be according to the larger amount. But the Kohen, but the Kohen wants it, right? It goes to the Kohen, the surcharge. Yeah, but you don't have a right to the larger amount. You don't necessarily have a larger amount. The most we know you have a right of a chametz is for the smaller amount. And therefore, when you give this larger amount for the fifth to the Kohen, because who else is going to have it, he'll have to pay you for the extra amount. The only amount that you have to give him is a smaller amount, because that's the only thing we know has a right to. More than that, we don't know has a right to. So therefore, the amount more, he's actually going to have to pay. You get your atonement by separating it. Now the question is that what's the monetary right of the Kohen? Now belongs to the Kohen. What's his monetary right? That's why it has to go to him. Well, his rights for sure are only for the smaller amount, not the larger amount. And therefore, if he wants the whole thing, he's going to have to pay for that extra amount of the chomesh that goes for the larger truma. Okay. Now, the Bar Tanura points out that so the Mishnah says it's medamaris kakatana shebishnein, right? When the two things fall together, then I have a demua, I need 100 times more. 100 times more of what? The smaller one. Okay. Now, if let's say I do have 100, I have 100. So now if I have 100, that now has nullified the small amount of truma. I don't have a mixture anymore. Okay. But as we said before, the halacha is that even when you have 100 times more, you still have to give the Kohen what would have been the truma, because that was his money that was here. So the Bar Tanura says that when you have 100 times more, the smaller one, so I don't have a mixture anymore, but rather, what do I take from the chulin? I take the amount of both trumas that fell in and give to the Kohen, and the rest is chulin. When I now have to make sure to cover the money of the Kohen, I have to give him now an amount of produce that's going to be the amount of both these trumas. That means I have to give him a larger amount. If I give him a larger amount, I cover both possibilities. The question is why? We've been saying until now that the halacha is that his rights are only for the smaller amount. If his rights going to the smaller amount, why do I have to go ahead? If his monetary claim is only to the smaller amount, why do I have to give him a portion that's equal to the larger amount? Why now are we covering everything when we're dealing with a monetary demand here? We're not dealing here with a question of Isser v'heter, what's permitted, what's not permitted, in fulfilling the Torah's obligation. We're talking about here a monetary question. So why here, if there is 100 times more than the smaller amount? So we say anytime there is a nullification of 100 to the truma, you got to give him the amount of truma that got mixed in. But again, that's a monetary claim. Why not just work with the smaller one? So the answer that some give is that you're right, it should be that way. But once the Chachamim said that in the case of a mixture of truma with chulin, that when I have 100, I have to make sure to go ahead and give him according to what fell in. So they didn't differentiate. Whatever fell in, that's what you have to give back. It was basically what we call loy plug. They didn't want to differentiate. I'll read it to you from here. Some explain that although the requirement to separate a portion of a mixture containing nullified truma is based on the Kohen's monetary claim to the truma component, once the rabbis established such a requirement, which is, again, to make, even when it gets nullified, to make up for the amount of truma that fell in, once the rabbis established such a requirement, did not differentiate between cases in which the Kohen actually has a monetary claim and those in which he does not. Basically, what fell in is what you give back. They didn't make any differences. Again, when you have the 100 being nullified and it's not a mixture, and I'm going ahead and the rest of it is I'm going to get. It's just a question, how much do I have to make up for what was lost? Whatever fell in, the Chachamim said, whatever fell in, that's what you make up. That's what you make up by giving it back. Okay. Next mitzvah. Previous mitzvah was we're not allowed to cook milk and meat. And now we have the prohibition, and that we said also included not to have benefit from it, from that cooked meat and milk and meat. And now we have the prohibition not to eat meat and milk that were cooked together. Again, we use the same verse that says do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. That is the source of not cooking the milk and meat together. But being that the Torah actually repeats this verse 3 times, each one teaches us something more. First, don't cook. And then the other 2 teach us not to eat or not to benefit. If a person eats one kazayas from both, meaning a kazayas of this mixture, you get lashes. You're going to be liable even if you didn't actually benefit from eating it. Going, for instance, or you didn't have pleasure from eating it. He ate this thing was so hot that it burnt his throat as he was eating it. So basically, he never derived any kind of pleasure from it. Or let's say he added something bitter to it. And again, he basically had no enjoyment, no pleasure from his eating. Nonetheless, you still get lashes. A mixture of milk and meat that are not combined through regular cooking. Have a kavish, but rather they were soaked together. They were salted together, which both these processes are very similar to cooking in the sense that there's an exchange of taste between the 2 of them. The food itself is changed through these processes. In many ways, we say these processes are similar to cooking, but they're not actual cooking. That's not the regular way of cooking, which is on fire, which is through heat of fire. Such a combination is forbidden to eat according to rabbinic law, but you're allowed to have benefit from it. General rule is milk and meat that is only rabbinically forbidden, you are allowed to have benefit. If you basically salted them together, the halacha is you're not allowed to eat it midrabanan, but you could, let's say, sell to a non-Jew because you'll have benefit from it. B'sar chayav v'oif shenis bashlu, the flesh of a wild animal like deer, v'oif, or birds, fowl that were cooked, whether they were cooked in the milk of a domesticated animal like a cow or the milk of another wild animal. And again, these are only forbidden to eat midrabanan. The Torah's prohibition of milk and meat is meat from a behema, which in this context means a domesticated animal, a cow, sheep, goat, and anything else is only rabbinic. And therefore, deer meat, chicken, if it's going to be cooked in milk, will only be forbidden to eat midrabanan according to rabbinic law. Fish and kosher grasshoppers are permissible to cook in milk. You're allowed to eat them. There's no rabbinic decree on those. This applies in all places, at all times, both by men and by women. Have a wonderful day.